ever noticed that Sonic spends a lot of time on islands that are named after cardinal directions? South Island, West Side Island, North Star Island. And isn't it a bit weird that outside of the Chaos Emeralds being involved, there hasn't been any connection between them? I mean, outside of theories involving a bird race and maybe the Babylonians, but, you know, fanon at this point. No, but seriously, for being the birthplace of the franchise, South Island barely gets any recognition even in name outside of being where Green Hill is. Isn't that weird? Isn't it odd that outside of Green Hill, South Island just gets like zero recognition? Even in this day and age where Sega is attempting to keep lore consistent, the islands don't really get much recognition outside of specific locations. Or, you know, Angel Island. But what if Sega suddenly decided to do something wacky with them? Frontiers introduced the open zone concept, and what if they decided instead of just bringing back Green Hill and Chemical Plant, instead they reimagined the classic islands as actual islands that are interconnected and not just vaguely in the same space, with only art to go off of. That's right, baby, it's time for another what if where I'm in charge of a franchise and it's a magical wonder world where I have infinite depth, time, and resources to make my perfect vision. I want to take the various islands from the 16-bit games and 2.5D games and expand on their lore and supposed connections. Because like, you give us 4 islands, not counting Angel Island, that all have connections to the Emeralds, and you expect me not to draw connections? Nah, my guy, it doesn't work like that. So, let's close our eyes and go to this magical place. This is my pitch for untitled 3rd generation Sonic Islands game. Sonic Cardinals. Sonic and the Islands. Sonic and time. I don't know, I couldn't think of anything. So this game will be a 3rd generation game. For those of you who don't know what the fuck that means, Sonic Frontiers is the start of the 3rd generation of Sonic. 2D games being the 1st generation, 3D and 3D 2D games being the 2nd. I mean, personally, I'd consider Unleash the start of the 3rd generation and Frontiers the start of the 4th, but Sega doesn't agree, and who am I to argue with the word of God on this one? The game will feature 4 open zones: South Island, West Side Island, North Star Island, and the unnamed landmass from Sonic 4, which I will hereby dub East Mirage Peninsula, to keep with the cardinal direction and theme of the other 3. While the island in Sonic 4 was never officially named or even acknowledged as one, Sonic Origins shows Never Lake to be a part of a continent. Sonic for Episode 2, we can assume takes place around that peninsula due to the Never Lake being there. So let's go with that for fun. Angel Island will be featured because they already got enough love. We already know about the Echidna tribe and Chaos, and let's just leave them where they're at right now. So instead, 3 out of 4 islands featured here used weird bird iconography, and the background for Sonic 2 states that West Side Island was home to a civilization that disappeared overnight due to the abuse of the Chaos Emeralds, and divine intervention, whatever the hell that means. So I want to explore that a bit more, and what better way to do that than with Eastern mythology. In Eastern mythology, and in specific Chinese myth in this example, the 4 cardinal directions, north, east, south, and west in astrology are represented by 4 divine beings, or 4 symbols, each with a ton of star signs in them. The black tortoise of the north, the azure dragon of the east, the white tiger of the west, and the vermilion bird of the south. There is also a 5th divine beast, the yellow dragon, representing the earth itself. These also represent seasons with winter, spring, fall, summer, and midsummer respectively. But for this one in specific, I want to focus on the cardinal direction aspect, because 5 divine beasts, that's kind of hardcore. And great boss father. I'm not even going to pretend to be able to pronounce the Chinese names, so for the sake of me not offending an entire country, we're using the Japanese names: Genbu, Seiryu, Byako, Suzaku, and Kirin. So let's roll back and talk about the story here for a second. Typical story beats. Eggman fucks around and is surprised when he finds out. The adventure starts on the East Mirage Peninsula. Last time Eggman was here, he had managed to capture Little Planet and turn it into another rendition of the Death Egg. It's almost time for the yearly return of Little Planet, and Eggman decides to use this opportunity to explore the locales surrounding Never Lake. Digging around, he stumbles upon ruins beneath Never Lake that look vaguely similar to the ones found on South Island. Exploring further, he finds a sealed off section with a giant door and blows it wide open. Eggman finds a mostly intact tomb filled to the brim with what appears to be rusted over technology. It is then that in the darkness of the room, a pair of red eyes start following Eggman. We cut to above ground where Sonic, Tails, and Amy have gathered together to watch the return of Little Planet. With no sign of Eggman, it seems that this time around there won't be any problems. As the group enjoys their picnic, the wind starts picking up and Little Planet quickly appears in a flash, hovering over Never Lake as it always does. As the group starts preparing to get onto Little Planet, suddenly the ground starts shaking. A giant geyser erupts from Never Lake and drags Little Planet down into the lake itself. Little Planet is left half submerged in the lake. And with that mystery is where the game starts. The first open zone opens up, and you're now free to roam as Sonic, Tails, or Amy. East Mirage Peninsula allows you to visit the various locales found in Sonic 4. Splash Hill, Casino Street, the destroyed remains of Mad Gear. Sylvania Castle Zone would immediately surround Never Lake. Oil Desert is a small ring of desert hidden behind some mountains. Casino Street and White Park will be merged together as one big amusement park on a peninsula. You'd find some NPCs enjoying the tourism of the peninsula, both animal and human, because I'm not crazy. Splash Hill will be located on the bottom of the open zone as beach area. Lost Labyrinth will be closed off until you do specific parts of the story and start making your way beneath the island. It's there where the story progresses. A giant dragon robot that rises from Never Lake and wraps around Little Planet. It's here where Sonic and the gang meet with Rin, a mysterious robot that was running around the labyrinth. She claims that she saw Eggman and another robot making their way through the ruins and activating what she claims is named Seiryu, an ancient weapon made by your creators prior to their destruction at the hands of the Chaos Emeralds. Sonic, without the emeralds, is basically incapable of dealing with the massive mecha, and they quickly need to find the emeralds and help Little Planet. The story progresses to South, West Side, and North Star Island as Sonic and the gang chase the signal of the emeralds around. Each of the open zones follow the same general idea of turning the various locales into one cohesive island that could exist on Sonic's Earth. South Island would add some of its 8-bit locales into here, like Bridge Zone being part of Green Hill and Aqua Lake being the entrance to the labyrinth. West Side instead would add its new additions from Mania, Studiopolis being added and Chemical Plant still being intact after the events of Mania and Forces. You can also travel from Mystic Cave into Hidden Palace, where, Sonic and Tails will have some fun dialogue. North Star Island also introduces your fourth playable character, Trip, who joins the gang on their quest to help save Little Planet. On each island, you face a final boss without emeralds, still with themes that go insanely hard. Each of these bosses will be like little gauntlets of challenges like the build up to Dark Gaia before Supersonic, or Wyvern in Frontiers. Each time you face one of these robots, you also meet up with Eggman and the mysterious robot Kin, who looks exactly like Rin. On South Island, you fight the Divine Phoenix Susaku. On West Side Island, you fight the Divine Tiger Byako. And on North Star Island, you fight the Divine Tortoise Genbu. As the plot progresses, we get some lore about how Rin and Kin's creators used the emeralds to create a society and civilization across the world, but ultimately the power led them to destroy themselves, before Guardians being used as weapons to destroy the others. Sonic and the gang managed to collect the 7 emeralds and travel back to Never Lake, where Sonic uses the power of the emeralds to transform into Super Sonic and destroy Seiryu. However, before Sonic can retrieve the Time Stones from Eggman and Kin, the emeralds are forcefully removed from Sonic and used alongside the Time Stones. Suddenly in the sky, South Island, West Side Island, North Star Island appear out of thin air. Rin and Kin disappear, and the entirety of the East Mirage Peninsula is lifted from the continent into the air. And in a giant flash, all 4 islands are merged into one, with Little Planet acting as its core. Whoopsie doodles, surprise 5th open zone. Thanks to the power of the Chaos Emeralds and the Time Stones, South, West Side, North Star, and East Mirage have all been mended and merged into the small satellite. The various ruins now reconnecting and showing a massive empire floating just above Little Planet being used as a core for the superstructure. It's here where it's revealed Rin and Kin were split personalities of the 5th Divine Warrior, Kirin, who, after being created by the original civilization, attempted to destroy every faction with the power of the emeralds. In a moment of desperation, the tribes worked together with their Divine Warriors to stop Kirin from using Little Planet to wipe everybody out, but ultimately only managed to split Kirin in 2 and seal them beneath Never Lake. With only a few survivors left, the civilizations disappeared from history. Kirin is going to use the newly merged Little Planet to enact his ultimate plan, using Little Planet and the Time Stones to travel back in time and rule over the planet as a deity, removing free will from the people. Having seen and learned from Eggman that civilizations continued their petty destruction even after being sealed away millennia ago. It's here that Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Trip start their counterattack on Kirin. The group works together to take back the 7 emeralds across the satellite and destroy the connective tissue between the islands. Unlike the varying locales of the 4 other open zones, this one would mostly be restored ruins, smaller than the others, ultimately acting as more of a story zone and less of a sandbox for you to run around in like the previous 4. Awaiting at the end of each of the 4 continents on the satellite is a refight against one of the Divine Warriors, who've been taken over by Kirin. Just for fun as well, Seiryu is now given a similar boss fight to the other 3 instead of the previous Supersonic boss fight. With the 4 Divine Warriors destroyed, Sonic and the gang have reclaimed the 7 emeralds, and all that's left is Kirin's true body, housing all 7 Time Stones. Then the final boss is a giant golden dragon, dragging Supersonic across the entire satellite. You can see, like, old locations beneath you. Bumping final boss theme as well, because, I mean, come on, you gotta. No special second super form. I think having another one so soon after Starfall Supersonic is too much, or Supersonic 2, whatever the hell it was called. Kirin is destroyed by Supersonic, and the Time Stones are removed from the robot. It's here where Sonic uses the power of the emeralds and the Time Stones to reset everything back to normal. However, in a moment between time, Kirin had split back into Rin and Kin. Rin apologizes for her other half's behavior and that thanks to her time spent with Sonic and friends, she realized the true potential of humanity. She tries to say goodbye to Sonic, but Sonic manages to grab a hold of Rin and Kin and drags them out of the subdimension they're currently in. Sonic returns to Never Lake where his friends are waiting. Sonic, Rin, and Kin drop down into the soft grass. Sonic transforms and explains to the confused Rin and Kin that he saved them from the reset because neither of them were given a real chance to live. Rin and Kin are given a second chance at life and get to explore the planet, knowing that seeing the beauty of the world will eventually change Kin's mind, with Rin being there to keep him in check. The group then enjoys the rest of their picnic as Little Planet once again rises into the air and disappears. Star-like objects appear from the satellite in the shape of Sonic's head before falling to the ground. And that's the story and general setting. After this, the game will let you swap between all 5 open zones to complete anything you haven't finished at that point. Of course, with the added option of flying around each island as Supersonic, because what's the point of lovingly recreating each iconic island without the ability to see it from above properly? Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Trip are playable. You're able to switch your character on the fly with the press of a button instead of needing to go to a menu and reload. Personally, due to the lack of Angel Island and Trip's current power set being basically Knuckles with a double jump instead of a glide, I figured she'd be more fun to add in a 3D setting instead of both her and Knuckles. The initial 3 play pretty much like their Frontiers variants, except with some quality of life changes, mostly in their combat. Amy would use her hammer more in their combat while using her cards for effects like adding a fire area of effect to her hammer or damage over time thunder attack. Really expand her combos. Tails, I would imagine, instead of throwing wrenches underground, would be more of a parry combatant. Basic attacks, but when you successfully pull off parries with this technology, you can start doing real damage. Trip, on the other hand, I imagine is more of a shield combatant. She doesn't have a parry like the other 3, but instead successfully ducking and shielding will do spike damage. The ability to switch characters on the fly basically allows you to play as whatever character you prefer during both exploration and combat. So even if you don't fight with Tails or Amy, you can always switch back to Sonic. Speaking of, I changed Sonic's combat up a bit, using more kicks in his combat animations. I always felt that him using his fists was a little against his character design. He uses his legs constantly, even movie Sonic calls them lethal weapons, so you know, at least they get it. But it doesn't stop there. Instead of 3 expansions, the game would get 1 massive expansion a year later. Little Planet properly gets added as an open zone, letting you explore the satellite and travel back and forth through the past and future. A new boss rush mode, adding 3 new supersonic boss fights for the initial 3 Divine Warriors, and a refight as Supersonic against both Kiryu and Kirin, letting you collect the time stones around the satellite and make a good future. When you get all 7 stones, instead of getting a new super form, you're able to travel in time at your leisure. No new story, it's basically just an additional open zone for extra content and nostalgia. Plus, I don't think anybody would say no to being able to travel from Palm Tree Panic to Stardust Speedway. Supersonic for exploration is locked until you collect all 7 time stones, as to not make all the new platforming and combat too easy. Also, as an extra, using the time stones on the other open zones will give them new remixes in their themes and color schemes. While Little Planet would get new platforming challenges exclusive to the past or future, the other open zones would just be visually different. A year of extra dev time can't do everything, but I think that is one of the coolest things they could add onto a free expansion pack. And that's it! Who says nostalgia bait can't be at least somewhat new? I know that adding certain old zones makes everybody's hairs stand on edge, and believe me, mine too, but I think if there are only small parts of a great whole, instead of an entire tile set for multiple stages, multiple times, you know, it's fine. I do genuinely feel like one of the biggest shortcomings of Frontiers was its art style. I get why they chose the more realistic, if that's the right word, aesthetic, but even in its general geography, I was missing a lot of the typical Sonic stuff. No loops, outside of rails and platforming challenges, no floating platforms, you know, all that stuff that usually just appears as part of the locales and not magically appears as part of Sonic's imagination. But this is all just a what if, because I have too much time on my hands, and instead of learning how to make a game or make money, I spend my time imagining a Sonic game. I'm starting to think I have problems.